Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I wanted to talk about Mars opposite to Uranus in Synastry. Doing these Uranus oppositions in Synastry today. Super excited about this one. So, Mars and Uranus together are quite the feisty aspect to see in the Synastry chart. This one could actually be the top or one of the top sexual attraction aspects to see in Synastry, as far as it being really exciting and exhilarating and physically, because Mars is such a physical primal energy. This one can be quite a turn on. And it could be, yeah, like I said, one of these top sexual aspects to see in Synastry. Now, the ego battles that come with it, though, are not going to be for everybody. And sometimes there can be a tendency with this one where when we do get into a fight, which will likely happen with these two planets in opposition, neither wants to back down, because the energy of Mars, very masculine, very assertive energy. And then Uranus, also another masculine planet, with a tendency towards stubbornness and rebelliousness. When these meet in opposition, we're having an argument or we're having a fight, nobody wants to back down. So you have to actually look at the two natal Mars placements and see, like, who's the stronger Mars. And in some cases, if they're both strong, this contact could end up being quite volatile, with nobody wanting to back down. And it could get pretty ugly, because the other thing about a Mars-Uranus aspect is we're dealing with like pure primal impulsive energy. Neither planet or neither person is really thinking about what they're doing with this aspect. And that's a part of what makes it so attractive and sexual, is because there is this primal element to it. It kind of like bypasses the brain and the logic when you get activated by someone with the synastry aspect. And like if it's that type of relationship, but the same thing happens when we are fighting and getting stubborn and getting in our own head. And I have actually seen this one where you get together and have this really close, like really amazing fling and attraction and relationship even. And then for some reason, and it doesn't actually have to be just the Uranus person. Sometimes the Mars person can be offended by the Uranus person, and there's just like a cutoff, and then they never speak again. Or if it's a friendship, I've also seen this in a friendship where, we're really close and it's like, this is my best friend, and you feel like, you're going to be best friends forever. And then one day someone pisses the other off and it's done. You literally never talk again. You never see each other again. You're not even in the same orbit ever again. Like, you just are in two separate worlds forever. So it's really interesting how this one manifests, where it can be so hot and so close and so incredibly physical, and then with the flick, it's like the flick, the flick of a switch, and then you're gone, and you never talk again, you never see them again, you don't even think of them again. And see, that's the thing, is like, it seems like both people actually detach too. Like, you guys, like, you could have other Pluto aspects going on that are gonna make this more obsessive and stuff. But like, if it's just solely like a Uranus relationship, the way that both of you can flick off at the same time and never even care about each other again is honestly astounding. So this aspect can produce some very freaky stuff in that, like I said, and this is probably an extreme example and an extreme manifestation, and most functioning relationships that have some healthy compatible aspects, you're not going to see the extremes of this. But in some cases you will. And like I said about Moon opposing Uranus, I just did a video on that a few hours ago. With the opposition aspect, and especially with Uranus, when we're dealing with crazy Uranus, right? The opposition aspect is like the full moon aspect. You really get the fullness of the planets and like the full moon, which of course, the full moon, even people who don't know astrology recognize that the full moon produces some pretty crazy effects in people. The opposition aspect can do the same thing. I truly believe it's like the two polarities are so heightened, and like there's so much attraction because on one level we really do have what the other needs. And in this case, it is a form of masculine energy. The Uranus person really needs that opposing energy for balance and perspective on, their rebellious actions. And then the Mars person really needs the Uranus person's detachment to actually become whole. So it can be a soulmate aspect, but like I said, it's here today and gone tomorrow. If you have some Saturn, if you have some other compatible aspects, you can see this in long-term couples. You can definitely see this in long-term relationships where the couple stays highly attracted to each other over a long period of time, because there is always this element of expect the unexpected. So you can see this functioning. You can see people working with this if they're Uranian, if they're fiery, or even if they're air dominant, they can kind of like the excitement that this one produces. But there will be arguments, there will be differences. Sometimes the Mars person can feel like the Uranus person is like an alien. Like they just don't get it. They don't get, because Mars is also like, along with Venus more, but like Mars is something that we do truly feel as important. Like it's an energy that we are so naturally, it's so primal for us. It's not even really like, we don't think about it. We just are it, right? When you think of the first house and you think of Mars, like it's very primal, and the Mars person can feel like the Uranus person just doesn't get it. They just don't get that energy, right? Or they actively oppose it and fight them on it. And the Mars person in most cases is not going to stand for that. And so, yeah, there can be ego battles. The Uranus person also to the Mars person could be like the eccentric, or the even like there's something crazy about them. Now that can also switch with the opposition aspect. You can have these energies switch where maybe sometimes the Uranus person thinks the Mars person is completely crazy too. And it's funny how that works when we have a switch. Now I feel like that's very common with the opposition aspect in synastry, where like one person starts off as like, say, the Uranus energy, they're non-committal, or they're flaky, or they're eccentric, or they're kind of like unstable, and then it switches, and then that becomes the other person, and then it drives the Uranus person crazy, because the tables turn and everything has switched. So a really good use of this aspect, and probably something that's very necessary to do with this aspect, is physical activity, which of course there's one area that this could manifest in, that I've talked about, but in other types of relationships that are not sexual, you're going to want to be blowing off steam in some way. Like this isn't an aspect of comfy, cozy, like, I mean, if you have other really supportive aspects with Moon or Venus, you could maybe be cuddled up in bed for a day, but like, that's unlikely with this aspect on a close orb. You're going to want to be out there, and you are going to kind of activate a more bolder, more assertive energy in each other, which can be very good if you are a passive personality. Like, this aspect can really bring you out of your shell, and that's one of the gifts, is like it can really get you out there. And almost like a Mars Uranus aspect is so electric and so exhilarating that it can really get you out of your shell. Like if you're naturally a shy person and then you throw this aspect in a synastry, and then you just end up being super chatty or super outgoing or super physical, or it's very activating to the body to have an aspect like this. So it is like a useful thing to do to really exert yourself physically with this person, like gym buddies. That's a great use of this. And, if this isn't a long-term couple, they might be that couple that is hiking and, they are waking up at 5 in the morning going on this hike or going to the gym, and they're like the lift bros, or when they have something to channel it into. It could also be a business. They need something to channel this energy into, something that they can agree upon, right? So not one of their differences, but something that they actually jointly value, as shown by other aspects in this industry. To put the energy towards that is a really good release for it. So yeah, really interesting aspect. I do think it's easier than the square, but it can produce some really crazy, shocking stuff. Like I said, the here today, gone tomorrow kind of thing. Also, if you have this aspect in a long-term relationship, be open to the fluctuations of sexual desire because of the unstable energy of Uranus. It's like one day it could feel super exciting, and the next day you just might not feel as interested in each other. And with Mars opposition Uranus aspect, it's like normalize that fluctuation, okay, for each other, and you'll be good. So I'd love to know your experience of this aspect. If you have had it in Synastry, what has it been like for you? I'd love to hear about it. And thank you so much for the requests, you guys. Keep those requests coming, and we'll talk soon.